The World Health Organization states that vaccination is a simple, safe, and effective way of protecting oneself against harmful diseases. It plays a vital role in preventing severe symptoms, hospitalization, and even death. They all serve one purpose: to grant immunity and resistance from viruses. Today, we'll learn more about how vaccines are developed and what's next for the Filipino people in the field of vaccine research with Father Nicanor Austriaco, Order of Preachers, Doctor of Philosophy, and Doctor of Sacred Theology. Father Nicanor Austriaco earned a bachelor's degree in bioengineering, a master's in business administration, and doctorates in philosophy and sacred theology. Currently, he is a professor at the University of Santo Tomas under the Department of Biological Sciences, and he also teaches philosophy at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. His research interests include molecular and cellular genetics and moral theology. One of his prominent research investigations centered on the genetics of programmed cell death using the yeasts Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Candida albicans as model organisms, which was described in various published research. He is currently a Balik scientist, and his laboratory is working on a yeast-based vaccine against COVID-19 variants, as well as preparing for the next pandemic, developing an inexpensive yet effective oral yeast vaccine. This innovative yeast vaccine, once developed, is stated to be just like your regular Yakult drink that anyone can drink. For a country that needs accessible medical care, this is a big step towards a better future. Let's learn more about the vaccine from the scientist himself behind this vision.
What initially drew you to the field of drug or vaccine development, and what has your career path looked like so far?
My career path is very complicated because the Lord, our God, moved me in many different ways. So I am a molecular biologist. So I was trained as a molecular biologist, had an encounter with the living God during my PhD years at MIT in the United States. And so a year after completing my PhD, after I had begun my fellowship at the University College in London, I resigned my position and entered a seminary. After I was ordained to the priesthood, I was sent to the Dominican University in the United States, named Providence College in Rhode Island. And then 3 years ago, I was transferred here to the Philippines, pretty much in response to the pandemic and the pandemic crisis. And I am here. I returned home as a Balik scientist primarily to help our country prepare for the next pandemic. And one of the things that we're doing in my laboratory is that we are developing an inexpensive but hopefully effective oral yeast vaccine delivery system, not only for COVID-19, but for any other vaccine that you may want to think about in the future.
Can you share some of the major parts of it, because you're involved in right now, and how could they impact public health or disease treatment?
So I am a yeast molecular biologist. So yeast is a very small cell, but what's great about that cell is that you can genetically engineer it. And so we in many ways, we're molecular biologists, we're genetic engineers. We are working with a probiotic yeast. You can actually buy the basic yeast already in Mercury Drug or in Watson's. It's Saccharomyces boulardii. You can buy it, regarded as safe for human consumption, even for kids. And it's a probiotic yeast. And what we have done with that is that we have genetically engineered the yeast, the probiotic yeast, so that it is able to make a part of the SARS-CoV-2, the COVID-19 virus. So it makes just the part. So it's not the virus. It cannot give you COVID, but it makes a part of it and it secretes it into the environment. And ideally, and we know it works in mice already. So we've done all the studies. We did 4 independent trials. We showed that it works in mice. What you can do is you feed it to the mice, and then you wait 2 weeks, you give it another booster, and then a month from the initial dose of the oral vaccine, we have measured that there are antibodies in the mouse blood, and we've also determined that the cells that defend you, the T cells of your body, are also stimulated in response to this vaccine. We know that it works in animals. animals, in animal models.
This contribution that we're talking about today, can you help us understand its fit in the broader landscape of infectious disease control or chronic disease in the field of vaccines and disease treatment? Are there any potential global health implications?
Even if we were able to develop one vaccine using this system against an infectious disease, a human infectious disease, that it would benefit not only our country, but many other countries that struggle with healthcare. One of the things that we're also doing is we're expanding this platform to deliver other molecular cargo to the human body. So one of the things that you may or may not know is that Filipinos are highly susceptible to gout. So one of the things that my students and I are doing is that we are trying to take this yeast and to genetically engineer the yeast so that it is able to produce the molecular machine, the enzyme that will break down uric acid in the body. And so the idea here is that you will drink it, it will go into your stomach. And then for those of us who struggle with gout, it comes about because of high levels of uric acid in the body. And so if you take this probiotic and it's in your stomach, it passes through the stomach and resides in your gut for several days. So if you take it every day, then you're able to maintain the population of that microbe, that yeast in your gut. Then that microbe would help you to break down uric acid. It would hopefully then decrease your propensity to get gout. It's not just a vaccine delivery system, it's really a molecular delivery system, and it can be used for drugs. One of my students is also trying to figure out, a lot of people are talking about Ozempic, which is a injectable peptide that is used throughout the world, primarily in the first world, in the developed world, in the global north, the regulation of appetite and therefore the regulation of weight. And what we are trying to do is we're going to try to see if we can make a yeast that does the same thing. So the yeast will then go ahead and make that molecule that regulates your appetite. And so again, every morning you would just take your yeast, you put it into water or your milk or your buko juice and you drink it. And the idea is that this would help you to regulate your appetite. And since the Philippines struggles with diabetes, it has many metabolic syndromes, dysfunctions of the body due to overweight, too much sugar, basically too much rice, too much merienda, that we would be able to help regulate that with a simple yeast that is able to produce Ozempic.
What's your dream for the Philippines in terms of its research industry?
I have been privileged to come home to the Philippines and to encounter incredibly talented and intelligent and driven Filipinos who wish to become scientists. However, because of our poverty and the lack of infrastructure necessary for doing science well, and the training too, our culture does not encourage thinking outside the box. Our culture does not encourage challenging the status quo, which is so important in science, especially in molecular biology. My hope is that, in time we will become a country that values science. You can tell your lolo or your lola, I'm going to be a scientist, and they'll say, why not be a doctor instead? That's what they say now. It maybe in the future they'll say, wow, thank you, that's wonderful, you're doing science for our country. We don't do that now. Now it's like all my students, when they tell their lolo or lola they're going to become a molecular biologist, first of all the lolo will say, what is that? Ano yan? So you have to explain what molecular biology is, and then once they discover it's science, they go, become a doctor or a nurse. And I always explained, I said, tell your lolo, we, the biologists, the molecular biologists, we give our doctors and nurses the drugs they need to cure you. Without us, without the scientists who are doing basic research, you would not have the medicines that the doctors and nurses use. So we are just as important, even though we are often forgotten and we are unseen. The vaccines, you look at the vaccines during COVID, doctors and nurses were waiting for biologists and for research scientists to make these vaccines. And so we have to secure the future of our country. The health security of our country has to be secured, not just with access to healthcare, which it should, but also to the underlying foundations that make that healthcare system work. And part of that are the scientists who are investing their lives and the talent that God gave them to producing innovative technologies for our country.
Learning about scientists that work on vaccine really expand our knowledge about public health. Thanks to Father Austriaco for providing us a knowledge and inspirational insights about vaccine development. If scientists and researchers are given more funding and support to public health, we will move forward to a future of innovation where medicine is accessible for the masses.